Grief has a way of breaking all of our rules. You can't plan for it, you can't predict it, and you definitely can't control it. But what if that's the point? What if the healing you're chasing isn't found in fighting your emotions, but in allowing them? After walking with countless people through the pain of losing someone they love, I've learned something really powerful. You can't go around grief, you have to go through it. In this episode today, we'll talk about how to do that, how to move through grief without getting stuck in grief. Why don't force it, don't fight it might be the most freeing words you'll ever hear, and how pain, when faced with honesty and grace, eventually becomes gratitude. So, wherever you are in this journey, this conversation is for you. Grieving death is really hard because we were never designed for it. You see, death was never something that we were meant to fully understand, and that's why it hurts so deeply. And that's why so many people actually get stuck. Some people go through a grieving experience and they get stuck in the grief, but then their entire life gets stuck in that same season and that same place as well. And after 25 years as a minister in a church environment, I've sat with countless people who are in grief, in living rooms, at hospital bedsides, at funerals, and it's extremely challenging, as I'm sure you understand, and many of you watching this actually know by experience. You know, in all of those years, one truth has helped me more than anything else. It's helped me to help others, and it's this simple phrase, don't force it, don't fight it. What I mean by that is that grief is a day-by-day journey. Some days will feel lighter, others will feel much heavier. And having the flexibility helps you to adapt, and having self-awareness keeps you grounded. You see, if we are constantly forcing or fighting, we're not actually going through grief. Sometimes people do both of those mistakes. They force themselves to feel the pain because they think that they should be grieving. But then at other times, people will fight it naturally because the pain is very, very difficult to sit with and to walk through. But I've learned this, that if you fight it or you force it when you shouldn't, you will have your soul trying to skirt around the edges of grief instead of going through grief, and then you'll never process properly. Our culture tells us to just be strong and to just move on. We feel guilty when we're not okay, but grief isn't linear. Forcing yourself to feel better too soon can actually make it worse. And avoidance doesn't heal pain, it traps it. Therefore, what are we going to do about how to actually practically process grief when it's our turn to deal with it? Well, I've got a few tips for you, and I want us to go through them one at a time so that you can really have a strategy that you can get handles on when you're facing this challenge. The first thing is what to do on easy days. Now, that might sound like a funny thing to say, to suggest that there are easy days in grief. Well, we know that they're all challenging, but there are easier days where we are not really struggling with the heaviness and the weight, and it feels a little bit lighter. On those days where it's a bit easier, it's so important that we don't force ourselves to feel feelings of grief, but rather let the peace come to you naturally. Number 2, we want to stay aware. This is all about self-awareness. This is all about checking in with ourselves daily and learning to stop for a half a beat, a half a second, and have a look internally at how our process is actually going. If we can stay aware, we will do better at moving with the rhythm of not forcing and not fighting. Number 3, there are certain things that we need to remember. Now, when I talk about remembrance, I'm talking chiefly about this idea that avoidance will trap the pain but presence transforms it. In other words, we want to make sure that we're not breaking this macro rule of forcing when we shouldn't or fighting when we shouldn't. When we feel the heaviness of the grief, let it be there. When we're having moments where it's not overly present, let that be the case as well. Let's talk about a couple more here. Number 4, that is trust the process. We need to learn to accept up front that grief is a journey. And for many people, it can be an elongated one. It can take not just months, but years at times. But here's what I've discovered through mentoring and coaching with thousands of people during my career. When we actually learn to apply this macro rule on a daily basis of not forcing and not fighting, what happens is we end up traveling through grief in a healthy way. And you'll know that you've traveled through to the other side because you'll have memories that are subsiding in pain. When you're early in the process, memories will have a high presence of pain. But when you're moving through the process and making your way out of the grieving process, your memories will be rich, but the pain level will be diminishing over time. When people don't stay with the process, when they do force it or they do fight it, they don't process well and they find that a process of grief that should have been months perhaps actually goes for years and in some cases can last a lifetime where the memories always bring high levels of pain. I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to live with a rich retention of memories, but to have a diminishing pain level. Let's talk about one more. Number 5, what do we do on heavy days? Well, if you've been listening, you probably can guess what it is I'm going to say to you because we've been talking about it all the way through this episode. On heavy days, we need to learn not to fight with our emotions, but rather we need to let them move through us, come up out of us, and not wrestle. One of the greatest struggles that people have in grief is that when they have those heavy days, they think that the best response is to control the emotion, wrestle the emotion, and try and suppress it and keep it from getting out of control. I understand why people feel that response, but you need to understand that when you do that, the only thing you do is you guarantee that those heavy days will hang around for much longer. On a heavy day, don't fight the emotions. Let them happen. Let them move through you because that's part of the process of actually getting through grief. You know, I mentioned a few moments ago that sadly, so many people, when they face grief, they get stuck in grief because they don't have a good strategy like we're talking about today. But also, as a result of getting stuck in grief, they get stuck in every part of their life. And I'm so passionate about helping people to get unstuck. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but I've actually put together a super comprehensive training program that's all about getting unstuck so that you can move to the next phase of your journey, which is growing. And once you get growing, you get to experience this nirvana of getting upgraded and really enjoying the life that you're living. And so if you're curious about that training program, there's a link in the show notes below. It might be right for you. It might be right for a friend, but check it out. It's the one thing that can help you to really get unstuck, especially if you got stuck in grief years ago and you're still stuck there. Well, as we close out in this episode today, I want to remind you that even winter turns into spring, and that's what we can see happen in our life. And we want to apply this golden rule of don't force it, don't fight it. We know that every day is different, and that's part of the healing process. Our healing doesn't come from controlling our emotions, but rather as we learn to allow them, as we face them, and then believe it or not, grief can become gratitude over time. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch today. If you've got a comment, why don't you drop that below and share some of your journey and story with me, and I'll see you in another episode real soon.